Hi, I'm Steve Farrell, the Worldwide Executive Director for Humanities Team, and this program is called One with the Divine. Here at Global Oneness Day, we know that all of life is interconnected, that all of humanity and all of life are emanations of the divine, and we are all unique aspects of the divine, never separate from all that is. When we see another person as one with ourselves and not separate, we honor the divine in each other and every person. This, of course, is the meaning of Namaste. When this occurs, we live in a new paradigm of peace, love, and sufficiency for all. The leaders on this panel embody this wisdom, so they are very powerful. It's my great pleasure to welcome Michael Bernard Beckwith, Gary Zukav, Panache Desai, and Matthew Fox to this Oneness, One with the Divine panel, and I'm going to introduce them here now. I'm going to introduce them one at a time, and then we'll go to questions and panel discussion. Michael Bernard Beckwith founded the Agape International Spiritual Center, a trans-denominational community of thousands of local members and global live streamers. He is a sought-after meditation teacher, conference speaker, and seminar leader on the life visioning process, which he originated. Agape's global humanitarian programs provide food, retraining programs, schools, libraries, orphanages, hospitals, clinics, homes for unwed mothers, microloans, financial support during natural disasters, and human advocacy. And welcome to Global Oneness Day, Michael.
Steve, it's my joy to be with you again and to continue our wonderful expression of oneness and love. It's good to be with you.
And nice to give you a proper introduction here too, Michael. And next, Gary Zukav's gentle presence, humor, and insightful wisdom have inspired millions to realize their soul's greatest potential. A master teacher and eloquent author of 4 consecutive New York Times bestsellers, Gary is dedicated to the current extraordinary transformation in human consciousness, an unprecedented threshold in the human experience. This transformation is no less than a revolution of the soul, one that touches the heart of all humanity and is based on spiritual growth, conscious choices, and a celebration and reverence for life. And welcome to Global Oneness Day, Gary.
Thank you very much, Steve. And I apologize to everyone for my abrupt exit a moment ago. I'm sorry I missed your introduction, Michael. I'm really looking forward to connecting with you and Matthew and Panache. This is my first little gift to oneness. If I hadn't left, we'd all be listening to a 2-cycle leaf blower for the next 15 minutes. And I want to focus on you. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. And I'm honored to be here with you, Michael, and with you, Matthew, and with you, Panache, whom I'm really, and Carolyn. Thank you all.
Thank you, Gary. And Gary's wife's birthday is, Linda's birthday is Global Oneness Day, so special birthday shout out to her. Panache Desai is a spiritual thought leader, teacher of life mastery and personal development, vibrational catalyst, author, and inspirational speaker. He is on a soul mission to empower you with tools, experience, and understanding you need to create a life of passion, purpose, and possibility. Panache shares, the truth is life can be simple and beautiful when you let go of the distractions pulling you in every direction. Welcome to Global Oneness Day, Panache.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and I just echo the heartfelt love and energy that's being expressed by all of my wonderful friends and fellow panel members. So my love to everybody.
Thank you, Panache. And it's great to have you with us. And next, Matthew Fox is an internationally acclaimed spiritual theologian, Episcopal priest, and activist who was a member of the Dominican Order for 34 years. He has devoted 45 years to developing and teaching the tradition of creation spirituality, which is rooted in ancient Judeo-Christian teaching and is inclusive of today's science and world spiritual traditions. Seeking to establish a new pedagogy for learning spirituality, melding the ancient wisdom tradition with contemporary science and modern mystics, he founded the Institute of Culture and Creation Spirituality. And welcome, Matthew, to Global Oneness Day.
Thank you, Steve. Good to be with you and with Michael and Carolyn and Gary and Panache. Looking forward to our discussion this afternoon.
Okay, fantastic and great again to have you with us. And I want to say first that I'm honored to be with each of you on this panel. Truly, each of you offer extraordinary spiritual leadership. The subject of this panel I was sharing, I don't think I've even seen Oprah get to sit with the 4 of you before. So I consider myself and all of the viewers very lucky. there's a lot to cover, so we're just going to jump right in here to questions and panel discussion. And Michael, if it's okay, I'll direct the first question to you.
Sure.
You've said that we're all hearing the higher call to become even greater instruments of love, peace, and healing for our planet today, and that the journey begins in the mystical corridors of our own soul. Can you explain this in more detail for our viewers?
Sure. When you deal with those qualities of love and peace and harmony, that is the essence of the presence of God. And each of us have a calling to represent those qualities according to our unique pattern. Peace is the dynamic of harmonizing good. It's not the absence of conflict. It's not the absence of any negative situation. It's an essence of the spirit all on its own. Love is a total givingness of the spirit without any sense of withhold. Harmony and elegance is the outpicturing of the mind of God that shows up as the cosmos in the universe. And each of us are to actually represent the cosmos in a way that has never happened before. So whether we call ourselves instruments of the divine, emanations of the divine, radical centers of the divine presence, I think that the words are less important than moment by moment encounters with this presence through the sacred practices that all of us practice in some way, shape, form, or the other, of meditation, of mindfulness, of insight, of sacred service, of high fellowship, deep study. There comes a moment where we actually have an insight into this truth. And an insight is an event that happens in consciousness where we suddenly or incrementally realize what we formerly believed. It becomes very real to us. So at this stage of our development, we have to choose this. We have to consciously participate in this. And with everything that we're facing as a human species, more and more and more of us are called to choose this higher order of being, this higher order of living, to assist in the pulling up of the human species for such a time as this. So that's my opening statement on what you have just said.
Beautiful. Thank you, Michael. And let me also share, as I did just before the program began, that when you respond to my question, feel free to respond to panel discussion as well. We want to make sure that we hear all of the things that feel pressing as we're coming around to the panel. So Gary, I'm going to come to you next. And in your best-selling book, The Seat of the Soul, which led the way in aligning the personality with the soul as a way to fulfillment in life, many think of our personality as our ego and feel we need to get rid of our ego. Can you explain how we can align our personality, our ego, with our soul?
Well, I wouldn't use the word ego myself, although I think I understand it as a self-serving aspect of people. I would say that, first of all, I agree with so much of what you said, Michael. It's a special time now. I don't think it's ever occurred before. I think there's a transformation in consciousness throughout our species that's happening, and it's expanding our perception beyond the limitations of the five senses. And we can begin to sense that we are more than bodies and minds. And we can begin to sense that our world is not random, it's meaningful. And as I especially agree with you about choice. That's fundamental, I think, to where we're going. And that's fundamental to creating real power. And by that, I mean the alignment of my personality with my soul, which is that part of myself that's immortal. And I suggest that each of us have an immortal aspect of ourselves, and that the qualities, the intentions of the soul are harmony and cooperation and sharing and reverence for life, and that really where we're going is to create love. Everybody knows that's on this panel, and everybody knows that's in all of the audiences that everyone here would speak to. But how do you do that? How do you do that how do I do that when I'm angry? How do I do that when I want to kill someone or I want to kill myself? How do I create love when I look at the policies now that are creating these circumstances in our country and the world? How do I keep myself from judging, from blaming, from wanting to feel better about myself by changing the world? And for me, changing the world requires changing me, which I think you also said, Michael, that's, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but I believe the only way that I can change the world is to change myself. And the reason's pretty simple, because the world that we inherited from a 5-sensory species is built on the understanding of power as manipulation and control. That's external power. And it now produces only violence and destruction. So if I want to change the world, I can't do it by trying to change somebody else. That's external power. That's only adding more to the world of what it's already made of. I have to add authentic power to the world, and only I can create authentic power, and only I can choose when to do it. Only I can choose when I'm angry to reach for the most loving part of my personality that I can. Only I can choose when I'm feeling inadequate or superior to reach for loving parts of my personality that are in connection with other people. And these are the gifts that I can only give choice by choice, decision by decision. And that's what I want to, that's what I want to share. That's what I want to put on the table as we start. That for me, aligning myself with the immortal part of myself, co-creating with divine intelligence those circumstances in the Earth School that are optimal for my growth, given the wisdom of the choices that I've made, and honoring the path that everyone else has taken, whether it's our president, whether it's the people he's appointing to his cabinet, whether it is a brutal jailer in Venezuela, or whether it is someone I love. How can I respond in my integrity? How can I remain a loving presence in the world? That's hard in my experience, but that's creating authentic power, and that's part of the conscious transformation of humankind that I feel we're all on this panel consciously participating in.
Wow, beautiful. Great way to open up, Gary. Thank you. And Panache, I'm going to come over to you here, if I may. You explained that your soul signature is your spiritual DNA. Can you share with viewers what you mean by spiritual DNA?
Everyone that's listening has a foundational core of being that is their essential self. And the more they simply rest in the observation of all that has been superimposed over that essential self, the more that which is unsustainable begins to collapse in their experience. Meaning that the observation of oneself is the highest form of spiritual practice. And to meet oneself without judgment, and to be able to embrace oneself in the midst of every behavior, every thought, and every emotion is intelligence. And the more we begin to express this individually within ourselves, the more we free the collective of these unconscious impulses that we've incarnated into, until eventually we become responsible and accountable, and become a place within which incompletion finds resolution. And it's at that point that our humanity becomes the doorway to our divinity. And we begin to see that the purpose of life is to recognize, first and foremost, that every aspect of creation, regardless of how we perceive it, has been serving a purpose. And that purpose is to bring us home to ourselves. So when something bothers you, the place to look is within. When your mind is chattering, the thing to do is to simply recognize that you have the awareness of the mind, that you aren't the mind, that there is a part of you that is aware of the mental activity. And the more you begin to relax into your experience of being human, the more energy begins to flow, the more prana or life force energy begins to be cultivated within the body, and the more you begin to attract more dynamic and expansive possibilities into your life. Peace is the embodied state of your enlightenment. And when you return to that truth and that foundation of being, you are naturally then embodying your highest vibrational point of attraction. And so God is our foundation. God is the reason why we are here, and we are interacting with God in a myriad of different forms in order to come to know ourselves beyond the confines of the created self.
let's just breathe into that here for a second. And I want to do that, in response to each of you. Again, just really extraordinary. Thank you, Panache. That was beautiful. And Matthew, I'm going to come to you here now. It's been said that you are leading us out of our contemporary religious and spiritual confusion into a new clarity of mind and peace of soul by affirming rather than abandoning any of our traditional beliefs. Can you expand on that statement?
Well, I think there are a lot of treasures, some of them kind of hidden, buried, locked up in all of our spiritual traditions, and science too, that is bringing forth quite a lot of wisdom in our time, for sure. So being able to call on varied traditions today is a very great privilege. It's unique, kind of like what Gary was talking about, and Michael, that we're in a very unique time in history, that we can be fed and nurtured by, for example, Native American spiritual practices. I know I've been very blessed through sweat lodges or sun dances or vision quests. And of course, traditions from the East and practices from the East, of meditation and more. And then our own Jewish and Christian traditions and Muslim traditions. So it's a very unique time in history. But of course, it has to be, because we're facing such gross evil at this time in history. And we have to wrestle with evil in whole new ways today. My book on evil came out this year with a foreword by Deepak Chopra. And in it, he says that evil is the #1 spiritual issue of the 21st century. And I think that the kind of realities we're facing today, everything from the elevation of Nazism to normal behavior or whatever is going on, to, of course, the hurricanes and the climate change that is affecting all of us in a deep, deep way. I was with 150 scientists this summer on an island, Star Island off of New England, and the theme was climate change. And they were saying that, the wet parts of the world, like Houston, are going to get wetter and more fierce storms. And the dry parts are going to get drier with more droughts and more wildfires. This week I was flying to Missoula, Montana, and you couldn't see out the plane. It was all gray in daytime. And then I realized when we landed, well, there are forest fires all over the place. The next day I flew to Portland, the same thing. You didn't look out the plane and see this beautiful green territory. Instead, you couldn't see anything. It was all gray from the forest fires. This at the same time that Houston is being flooded in unprecedented ways. So we need warrior energy today. And I want to say a word about anger. I do not see anger as a negative thing at all. Thomas Aquinas, a great pre-modern theologian, said that nothing great happens without anger. Anger is that fire that keeps us going during difficult times. And so every prophet was angry. Gandhi was angry, King was angry, Mandela was angry. But what did they do with their anger? You see, that's what nonviolence is. It chooses another path than more anger. And so you take that anger and you lasso it, because these weren't individuals, isolated individuals who were angry. Their people were angry. They were being treated unjustly, whether by the British Empire or the segregation empire of racist America. So that's what we need today. We don't need to run from anger. We need to channel it into effective and nonviolent manner. And so creativity, I think, is at the heart of the spiritual agenda today. And I love what Michael and Gary both said about choosing, choice. That's when morality comes into the picture. Morality is about choosing. And for us to choose to not go along with Nazi sympathizers, and to not go along with people who are in denial about climate change. And it's just appalling, really, that we have an entire political party in our lifetime that has taken a stand of know nothing. What me worry? I was at a conference a year ago in January in Florida. It was on the seas rising. It was January 2016 during the presidential election. And the scientist got up to lead it off, and he had pictures of Florida. And he said, here's Florida today, 10 years from now, chop, 20 years from now, chop, chop, 30 years from now, chop, chop, chop. No Florida, practically no Florida, because it's all going under. However, at that time, 2 presidential candidates from Florida and the governor were in complete denial about climate change. And then I visited South Miami, and there's 6 inches of water on the sidewalk there. So, I mean, denial is a serious spiritual, evil. Because Aquinas said that to choose, here we're back to choice again, to choose to be ignorant of something that is important, said Aquinas, is a mortal sin, namely a deadly virus that you're spreading, it not only to yourself, but to the community, to the media and everything else. So these are issues that, love and justice go together. The biblical teaching is that love is justice and justice is love. So justice and standing up to injustice is going to take the warrior energy of the prophets. And we're all capable of this. We all have it in us, but we don't want to just lash out. It's not about venting, and it's not about blaming, but it is about getting that fire going to change things and recreate our institutions, our forms of doing worship and education and politics and economics and religion, and certainly the media.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Matthew. And let me just I'm going to,
Amen.
There's so many superlatives I could use after each of you speak. So instead, I'm going to just go to silence, which is my gratitude, and just kind of feeling in to the wisdom of what has been shared. I'll do that here following your remarks. And Michael, I'm going to come around to you. I'm going to guess you might respond to some of what Matthew shared. But the question to you is, in your book, Life Visioning, you mentioned or talk about these 4 stages of consciousness, and you share how people can move from victim consciousness, which where people start, into the embodiment of spirit. And I just wondered if you could talk about important steps during that journey.
Absolutely. I do want to respond to it. There's so much richness that has happened already in this conversation with Gary and Panache and Matthew. And I agree with Matthew in terms of, I like to use the word righteous indignation during this particular time in human history, when so many things are rising up that would oppose love and harmony and peace and compassion. And we're not to deny those things at all. And we become absolutely indignant about it. And that's a very powerful movement. I like his use of the word warrior. I say that we're to be warriors, not worriers. We're to put on a warrior spirit, not a worrier spirit, and be pulled by a transcendent vision that becomes immanent in our heart and soul through our spiritual practice. There's a difference between the world and the planet. Planet is Mother Earth, mainly water, rivers, deserts. And then there's the world. The world is a collective, a synergetic conversation, beliefs, opinions, points of view. Therefore, everyone lives in a different world on the same planet. And I think what we're about, through our spiritual practice, our ability to articulate a vision, our holding our warrior energy, and being able to embrace our righteous indignation, is to actually shift the conversation so that we're changing the world. We're changing the narrative of what's real. As Matthew was saying, there are whole political parties that have a narrative that has no basis in reality. And I think our role is to have a narrative of the possible human, the narrative of our potential being actualized, beginning to be so strong and so articulate and so powerful that we actually carry the vibration of the answer even before there's a manifestation, even before there's a visible expression of it. So it's going to take, the warrior spirit is going to take the righteous indignation, it's going to take the embodiment of love, not just a belief in it, and the embodiment of peace. And of course, there are stages in that development. As you mentioned in the book, Life Visioning, there's the victim stage, where people are basically saying that their happiness and joy, their peace, comes from outside of themselves. They're victimized by the past. They're victimized by past experiences. And they stay in blame. They stay in shame. They stay in regret. There's many people that just live in that dynamic. They're victims of it. And so in order to move out of victim consciousness, we have to be strong enough to enter into giving up blame. Matthew mentioned that as well. Giving up blame, coming into forgiveness. Now, forgiveness does not let people off the moral hook. It eliminates the resentment, the rancor, and the animosity in our own soul. So that as we are able to stand in the frequency of forgiveness, such as Mahatma Gandhi, Dr. King, other individuals who have walked the planet, Nelson Mandela, we become empowered by the cleanliness of our own soul. Now we're able to step into the manifestor stage. We're able to actually use spiritual principle to begin to build a different world, a different narrative. From there, we become vehicles and channels for the absolute presence to use us. We stand in the awareness of send me, use me. And then ultimately, there's an awareness of our oneness with this very thing that's sending us. So those stages go from victimhood to the stage of the manifester, to the stage of the channel or instrument, to the stage of pure being. And in every single stage, you have to have a conscious choice. Choice is a function of awareness. Without expanded awareness, we're merely reactors. We are reactionaries, not evolutionaries, not revolutionaries. We are reactionaries. The spiritual practice gives you insight to expand your awareness so you can actually choose. You can choose love in the face of hate. You can choose love in the face of white supremacy. You can choose it, not deny it. You can stay in your radical righteous indignation, but still have a heart full of love and compassion because you're not reacting, you're responding from a deep sense of embodiment of the truth that makes us free. So I think that there's just been a lot of rich nuggets that have come through everyone, and I'm trying to just kind of embrace it and answer your question at the same time. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. And Gary, I'm sure you're going to want to come in and respond to the group discussion too, but I wanted to just bring in a question that you state that we're experiencing the birth of a new species. From an evolutionary point of view, that it's happening very fast. And just wondered if you could just share, talk about that in a little more depth.
I'd be glad to, but I agree with Michael. There's so many nuggets here that we're talking about. I'd like to talk about some of them and then come back to what you asked about.
Yeah, please.
For example, we've used it by we, not I, but Matthew and Michael have used words like evil, warrior, anger. And at first I would think, my goodness, we're really on different tracks here, but I'm not sure. And that's why I'd like to ask you to, Matthew and Michael, to begin to follow this through and see. I'm beginning to think that we're not. One thing, I might as well begin at the kernel. I don't feel that the world is based on good and not good. I believe it's just good. Mm-hmm. So I don't believe it's based on fear and love. I believe it's just love. So that means that evil, from this perspective, is an absence. It's not a presence. It's an absence of light with a capital L. It's an absence of love. And this definition of evil has always served me because it's helped me get out of the victim stage many times. Because in this stage, I understand that there isn't anything that can be done to evil. I can't imprison it. I can't lock it up. I can't kill it. It is an absence. And the only cure for an absence is a presence. So the only cure for evil is love. And the only place that I can cultivate love in the world without trying to change the world, which is external power, is to cultivate it in me, which is another way of saying that intention is fundamental. That from my perspective, there's only two fundamental intentions, love and fear. And the choice between these two is always presented to us. So for example, I think this might be what you were getting at, Mike was saying, Michael, that I might have a reaction. In fact, we use the same words, Linda and I, reaction versus response. Reaction being an unconscious acting out of an impulse, and a response being a conscious choice of love. And it's when I'm feeling the reaction to anger, the resentment, the hatred, that when I can reach for a loving part of my personality, say gratitude, appreciation, caring, patience, even while anger is roaring through me, that's a moment of creating real power, authentic power. And that is where, for me, the rubber meets the spiritual road. And I'm not sure that this is different from what either of you two have said, for example, warrior. Warrior I've used as that was a word along with anger that was big in my life. I was a Green Beret officer, special forces officer in Vietnam. I went to Vietnam wanting to kill, not because I felt righteous, but because I needed to feel better about myself. I needed to feel admirable. I needed to feel loving. But I didn't recognize any of this. I thought that I was doing a good thing and a cool thing. And so I feel that something like anger is simply an expression of fear, like jealousy, resentment, superiority, inferiority, righteousness. They're all expressions of fear. And to challenge them requires love. So when I'm angry, am I going to act with the energy of fear, of judgment, of superiority, of righteousness? I don't really experience that in what I'm hearing on this panel. So I think there may be some commonality, maybe a lot of it here. The goal for me is to respond with love rather than react with fear. And as I respond with love, I start to create my future differently, because I feel, and in my experience, karma is real. It's an international, it's an impersonal, universal teacher of responsibility. And it's the real deal. If I put fear into the world, I experience that same thing coming back to me. And it's really hard to put love into the world when I'm hating someone. So I've got to find, and I do my best to find those parts of my personality that love, and those parts that hate. I do that through emotional awareness. The parts that hate hurt. The parts that love feel wonderful. So if I experience a part that hates, I know I'm in fear. And I know if I want to change the world, I've got to change it in that moment by contributing love. That's really hard for me to do. But I don't see another path for me. I don't really see another path for anyone who wants to change the world. And so, Matthew, I believe in warrior, but I'm a different kind of warrior now. I just dropped the term after I put down a rifle for the last time.
Yeah, I'm fond of that. My consciousness about warriorhood,
Pardon me.
Live,
My bad.
From another graduate of the Vietnam conflict. As a Native American student, my doctoral program a few years ago, he told us a story. When he came home from Vietnam, his elder said to him, "You've been a soldier, now we're going to make you a warrior." I said, "How long was the training?" 4 years of training, he said. 4 years of training. So there's a huge difference between soldier and warrior. The soldier is given a gun and say, "Kill or be killed." You've got a job. It's very focused. The warrior, on the other hand, does the inner work. The warrior has to do the inner work. And there's a great teaching from Hafiz, the 14th century Sufi mystic. He says, "I see foot soldiers dying in excruciating pain all around me, but you could become a victorious horse person, carrying your heart through the world like a life-giving sun, but only if you and God become sweet lovers." So there he's describing the soldier is giving out pain and death and receiving it. The warrior is using that energy of strength to develop the mystic, to develop the lover inside. But he stressed that this Native American did that the training was a lot of it was about learning to let go, and this again is what the mystics teach. As Eckhart says, the soul grows by subtraction, not by addition. So I really like the point both you and Michael made about not reacting, responding. Because to me, reaction is the task of the reptilian brain.
Right.
And we want to move beyond the reptilian brain. That's what's killing the planet and killing ourselves. And it's dominant still. So how do we calm the reptilian brain? That's what meditation does. Because reptiles are not good at bonding, but they're good at solitude. And so we calm the reptile in us by learning stillness and that kind of letting go. But that allows in that mammal brain of compassion and kinship and caring to assert itself. So that's where I see the dynamic. Now, but I want to say one thing. To me, anger is not about fear. Anger to me is about love, because you are angry when what you cherish is being assaulted, and when it's under stress and duress. That's the good part of anger. It gets your energy up and running. And I think that it's a grave mistake to pinpoint anger as a negative thing. When it turns to violence, yes, but in itself, no. Aquinas says a trustworthy person is angry at the right people for the right reasons, expresses it in the appropriate manner, and for the appropriate length of time. So I think, again, that movements like Gandhi's or King's or Mandela's are gathering anger and taking that energy, but instead of turning it into oppressing others or just reaction, instead of just plugging it to the reptilian brain, is plugging it to the mammal brain, the brain of compassion, and showing people there are other ways to be creative, to use that energy in a creative way to alter things and to change the world. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wanted to say something about the warrior aspect too. When I use the word warrior, there's the soldier warrior that protects boundaries, and then there's the spiritual warrior that expands the boundaries of our own soul. So we actually release the filters, the obstructions, the hindrances. We're warriors of a different kind. It's an energy of expansion, whereas the foot soldier is a warrior that's protecting a man-made boundaries. I'm going to protect the country. I'm going to protect this boundary. I'm going to build a wall or something silly like that. So when I speak of a warrior, I'm talking about breaking inner boundaries so that we can be more porous for the light to flow into. And I appreciate what you said, Gary, in terms of I too am aware that the presence is everywhere, and that when the presence is not active in someone, there's an absence. And in that absence, an individual is acting from ignorance, they're acting from fear, they're acting from a sense of separation, and they do destructive and evil things, but there's no ultimate force called evil. The only ultimate is the presence of God, the presence of love and peace. And so how we walk on the planet is, as Matthew was saying, that anger through creativity becomes transmuted into right action. It becomes transmuted into creativity, becomes transmuted into articulation of a higher vision. And I don't see it as a negative. I see it as something to transmute with choice, with expanded awareness, with response from a presence that's never an absence. So I think we're all tracking each other in different ways.
Yes, and I'll just say, of course, one with the divine has many expressions too, doesn't it? So it's the different expressions. So it's healthy just to hear even slightly different expressions, and sometimes more than slightly different expressions. But Panache, you wanted to just invite you in, and instead of directing a question to you, I'm guessing you might just want to come in and respond to the panel discussion.
I really don't have anything to say.
Okay, well, then let me...
I have something to say for me.
Sure, Gary, please.
Steve. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Matthew. And thank you, Panache, for your deciding when you can have something to say. That's always a challenge for me, is deciding not whether I have something to say, but where the energy is coming from. Is it coming from fear? or is it coming from love? And I didn't mean to take the defense or the attack against words like evil, anger, and warrior. In fact, to do just the opposite, to see if perhaps the words themselves are not important, but the underlying energy. As far as I can see, the underlying energy is something that we're pretty much in appreciation of. In fact, very much in appreciation of.
Right.
So thank you for that. I had something terribly important to say, but I've forgotten it. I'll wait until it returns and offer it back.
We can all identify with that. I'd like to say a word about what just what Gary just said about the underlying energy, about talking about words like evil and warrior and anger. To me, that is interesting, because to me we're talking about the sacred masculine when we're using those words. And I think in our lifetime, the women's movement has obviously been extremely important for women and for men, and all that. But I also think that the return of the sacred masculine is an absolute choice today, an absolute need. I think toxic masculinity linked to the reptilian brain is out of control on the planet today, and certainly in our politics and everywhere else. So it's interesting, I think, that we're talking about these things, this underlying energy, as you say, that we're talking about, and as you say, it's not really the words, it's the underlying energy. I think it is an effort to bring back the healthy masculine. Yes. The healthy masculine stands up against injustice, whether that be racial or economic, social, or eco-injustice. And I think this is part of the zeitgeist and the spirit of our time, is part of that invitation to act that Michael was talking about. Because I think we have to, even the divine feminine cannot carry on without a healthy consort, without the sacred marriage of a healthy masculine and a healthy feminine. So I think that we're at this point where it's really interesting that this conversation fell into these themes. But as you say, Gary, the underlying energy, I would say we're here kind of in a soup wrestling with what does it really mean to model, but also to debate what the healthy masculine can be. And that's not just a discussion for men. Women, too, need to get on board with what a healthy masculine would be, as distinct from a toxic masculine.
Right, and that healthy masculine is also the embracing of that divine feminine within us.
Yes.
That divine feminine energy creates win-win situations, where an unhealthy masculine creates win-lose situations. I win and you lose. You know,
that very reptilian.
That reptilian brain.
Yeah.
But when integrated with that divine feminine, it's more communal, it's family, it's us, it's we. So we create a win-win, and this is what we need to see more of in the world, and because we're seeing that immature masculine in the world in many countries. It's a win-lose situation, and there needs to be an embracing of that feminine within us, and I think that a lot of the beings that are mirroring the immaturity in the world, presidents and potentates and dictators, you know, I call them a pseudo power. When I don't ever use the word I speak truth to power, because I'll say I speak truth to pseudo power, because the real power is the presence, and it's untouched and untarnished by time. We're here to have a realization of that, and I think that as people are having their own inner revolutions and coming to grips with who they are, then they will be the ones that rise up and help create a kind and just global society. I don't think it's going to come it's not going to come from governments. It's not going to come from the politicians, because many of them are in it for themselves and a limited constituency. It's going to come from the people. You know, when I just came back from South Africa and spoke there 4 or 5 times, and the young people that showed up, you know, 3,000 or 4,000 people in a crowd, had found out something called the internet and YouTube, and they were leaving the old paradigm of religiosity in droves and coming to this new, greater understanding of the teachings of Jesus and Moses and greater understanding, but they were leaving the power structures and coming to a greater awareness of this powerful presence and standing into deep practice with it. So I guess on one level, those that are standing up with the immature masculine, they're like allowing us to see what not to be, also showing us what's dying. They make a loud noise before that paradigm dies. And the underlying energy of love and harmony, a lot of the young people through music and hip hop and art have solved a lot of the issues that the immature masculine energy are still wrestling with. You know, they don't care what your gender is, what your sexual orientation is, what your color is. That the young folks are holding a whole nother space, and I think it's a beautiful part of our human evolution, a new species that's being born. Even though the media doesn't cover the birth of the new, the media is still covering the old paradigm, and that's what confuses people. They don't understand that paradigm is dying.
Yes, it is. That's what everything that Linda and I are talking about is the birth of a new species and a dying consciousness. But I'd like to talk a little bit about male and female, because I feel that as we become multisensory, which means not restrained by the five senses any longer, this is the huge shift in consciousness that's changing our understanding of everything, or at least mine. Power, community, relationship. So I feel that as we become multisensory, we begin, a new male and a new female is emerging. And they are different from the old male and the old female. The old male derives his meaning from providing and protecting. And the old female derives her meaning from bearing and raising children. But the new female is not restricted to those roles. The new female is capable in every aspect of her physical experience. She can run a country, fly an airplane, run a jackhammer, be a dentist, or be a nanny. And in other words, she doesn't need an old male to bring physical competence into her life. She is completely. And the old male is becoming a new male. And the new male is tender and intuitive and sensitive. You see the new male in airports, or at least I do frequently. They're walking around and they're patting on the little butts of their little babies with the same care and sensitivity that awes me every time I see it. These are new males. So I believe that new males are replacing old males, and new females are replacing new males. And I'm not saying in any of the things that I've mentioned that one is good or bad or positive or negative, because I believe that the language of the universe is more cause and effect. Whatever we cause, we experience, and that's the effect. And I feel that the universe is infinitely compassionate and patient with me, and I feel with everyone actually, as I again and again act from fear instead of love and create painful consequences. What happens is that I get more opportunities to do the same thing, to create with love instead of with fear. And I have a feeling that I'm getting a little better at it, maybe because of lifetimes of this practice. But creating authentic power, distinguishing love from fear within myself, and learning to choose love no matter what's happening in me, like anger or jealousy or righteousness, or no matter what's happening outside of me, like another 9/11 type of event, is creating authentic power. And I feel that we need that as a species to evolve. And the reason we need it is, I feel one thing, Michael, I would like to ask you about, because I think we may be in agreement here too. I don't feel that these changes are coming from people. I feel they're coming from me. I feel they're coming from you, from Matthew, from Steve, from everyone, one by one, choice by choice, that we create in the micro, the love that we have to before it can manifest in the macro. So in other words, I don't believe that eventually a critical mass is going to occur, and then the rest of us will live in love and peace. And I get a free ride because the critical mass is doing all that work for me. I believe I've got to do the work. That's creating authentic power. It's very individual, it's very heroic, and it allows me, as I do create it, to become an activist in the most positive way, whether it's a spiritual activist, environmental, judicial, social. I can become an activist without making anyone else a villain, because the moment I do that, I make myself a victim. So I am learning how to become an activist, as well as Gandhi and King and Jesus of Nazareth. But I know that it has to do with my intention, that if I don't have the intention of love, I'm just contributing more external power to the world. And that's what we don't need right now. We need is a new world based on the values of harmony and cooperation and sharing and reverence for life. And these are the values of the soul. So what do you think, Michael? Is it like when you said these changes are coming from the people, it's hip hop, the young people? I agree with all of that. But I've also seen people who are activists, but in their activism, they feel as though they're superior to people who aren't doing that. They feel as though they got the inside track, like I did when I was an environmentalist. I felt so superior to everyone involved in Georgia Pacific, Louisiana Pacific clear cutting. But that wasn't love. That wasn't love. It was my own inadequacies that I was bringing into my activism, right, and making other people wrong. How can I love these people who are destroying our forests? How can I love them and at the same time challenge every policy, every action that is destructive?
Right.
Without.
If there's time after Michael responds, because we only have about 5 minutes, Panache could maybe end us with something experiential, of just with a vibrational catalyst kind of experiential thing, which will be kind of bring us back into that place. I'd
like to know, Michael, what do you think about these things? I
think that there's something called spiritual activism. And spiritual activism, it begins with what you're saying. We have a deep encounter with the presence of love and of peace and of harmony. It's real to us. And then according to our own giftedness, we find where we are to act in the world. Everyone has unique gifts, talents, and capacities. And so everyone is not called to do the same thing, but everyone is called to do something. That there's an old story of a man who was a laundryman who was a Zen, he was a student of Zen. And no one in the town knew he was a laundryman. And so one day he had a satori moment. He had a moment in which he could see and feel the presence. And he went to his teacher and he says, I got it. I got it. I'm enlightened. And the teacher said, well, hold on a second. What is Zen? In that moment, he dropped his laundry bag. His back became erect. You could feel this light in his face. He was exuberant. And then the teacher said, well, what is enlightenment? And he picked up his laundry bag and went back to work. And so I think that we wake up and then we find where we are to give our gift in the world. And when we talk about, I believe in fields, like we create fields. I can't do the work for anyone. That's still choice. But through us coming together, we create a field that is rich and as real as magnetism and as gravity that allows that choice to be easier. But the choice is still an individual matter. Once we have reflective consciousness, natural evolution stopped. Once you have reflective consciousness, you have to choose to participate in your own unfolding. So I agree with you in terms of we're not just going to have a free ride. We're not going to ride into heaven on the wings of Jesus. Jesus did his work, and we have to do ours.
I agree with you with everything you said, Michael, and you said it beautifully.
Okay, beautiful. Yes,
thank you.
And a great diversity of thought. Again, oneness with the divine has no single path, does it?
That's for sure.
There are many unfoldments. Panache, do you want to do something for a couple minutes? Am I putting you on the spot?
Sure. Why don't we all just close our eyes and open our palms? And let's just humbly and simply ask that our life force energy, our prana, be liberated.
Well, that was beautiful, elegantly simple, Panache. Thank you, and just a huge thank you to this panel. Really extraordinary to be here with you all, with your different dimensions of wisdom and heart energy and so on. It's really just truly a privilege and a pleasure for me, and I'm sure I'm giving voice to all of the viewers that are part of this, part of Global Oneness Day here. So a huge thank you. I want to just share a few other messages here as well. I want to thank the enormous listening audience, those who are registered for Global Oneness Day, and those who are participating using the Amplifield platform, phone, webcast, and replay. Thanks also to the 2017 Global Oneness Day co-creators, the financial sponsors, all of the speakers, the referral partners, my humanities team colleagues who have been involved in planning this for 12 months, for a year. And definitely, last but not least, thank you to each of you, all of those that are part of Global Oneness Day around the world that make this day possible. This is our 8th year celebrating Global Oneness Day, and we've grown our number of registrations and viewers each year. Thank you to each of you for helping Global Oneness Day become our Earth Day for an awakened humanity. Replays are available for free for 48 hours, and if you didn't take notes and want to carefully review and the discussion, you can order MP3s and digital transcripts on the upgrade page on the Global Oneness Day site. For a limited time, there's this $100 summit discount. Also, Barbara Marks Hubbard and Humanities team have created a 52-week call to action that we've named Awaken the New Species in You. It begins on Tuesday, November 7th, and creates a year-round process to live authentically as one, using the process that Barbara created to fully awaken herself. To learn more about these programs, you can go to globalonenesssummit.org. Next up is the Restoring Real Community panel. It was created by Anna Marie Pieterse. She's my humanities team colleague in South Africa, where she is the country coordinator. This panel includes very special guests and is moderated by Caroline Chang. It's going to be fabulous. Don't miss it. Before we begin, we're going to be silent for 10 seconds to center ourselves in oneness with the divine and each other. We call this a oneness moment. Let's go ahead and begin our oneness moment now.